Okay, I just want to talk a little bit about advanced alien technology, not just your what we're all, the anti-gravity flying saucers and, the things that when everyone talks about reverse engineering, alien technology, we're all thinking about the craft that they're flying in. And of course, I believe that our government has been doing this, has been trying to reverse engineer this. The government, along with some private corporations like Lockheed Martin, most certainly, they have been trying to do this for years, since the late '40s, early '50s. No question about it. Since Roswell, but I'm not talking about that today. I'm talking about other technology that I'm sure our government is interested in. If they're not, then we got idiots running our government, but I don't think they're idiots, so I don't believe that's happening. But yes, I just don't know how they'd ever get their hands on this technology. And the technology I'm talking about is not the alien spacecraft. I'm sure they've been trying for decades to figure out the nuts and bolts of these things. How many they've ever recovered or captured, however they got them. I'm sure they're still working on that. And I just don't think they figured it all out yet. Because again, I think like these things are just so far advanced than anything we have. It's just going to take a long time, maybe hundreds of years. Who knows? But anyway, the technology I'm talking about is the technology that these beings use sometimes during their abductions. I mean, they have the ability, apparently, to basically shut people down, like turn them off like a light switch, like hitting a light switch. That's what it seems like. I mean, from the reports that have been made over, all these, there's a lot of different books I've read over the years about alien abduction, and it just seems, sometimes, there are people who don't remember anything at all. And it take maybe sometime years later they're missing time and they just can't figure out, and then they get hypnotized and they have these recollections. There's other abduction cases like the Allagash 4 from 1976, where it was four guys fishing and they get abducted, and they see a flying saucer. They remember that part, and then years go by, over 10 years go by before they realize, there's a couple of them are having dreams and about this thing, and they all go and get hypnotized, and they all have the same experience. They actually remembered getting abducted by alien beings and having, basically examined, very uncomfortable examinations, by the way. But it took them 12 years to remember this incident. They like the only thing they remembered was seeing a flying saucer. And then some sort of weird craft. And after, the next thing you knew, it flew, as far as they knew, it flew away. But there was some missing time, but they didn't think anything of it. For somehow, some way, the aliens made them forget about all of this. It happened with Betty and Barney Hill. I mean, they remembered at first seeing this flying saucer, and then the next thing you know, 2 hours later, they were back on the highway. They got home, but they were 2 hours late. They should have been home 2 hours earlier. They just didn't remember it. It took time. Years later, they get hypnotized. So, how do they do it? There must be some other technology involved here, something that makes people forget these incidents. In my experience that I had when I was a kid, I don't know what happened, and I've talked about this before. I've come to believe that this thing was an alien being was in my room when I was a kid, when I was around 8 years old. I'm thinking it's probably 1977, summer of 1977. That's what I think. But and the way that went down, and I've talked about this before, but I don't remember all of it. Like, did they make a mistake that night? Did some wires get crossed? And I was awake for some reason. I was awake when they were there, when I shouldn't have been. I'd hate to get hypnotized and find out. I don't think I want to know after all these years. But I'll tell you exactly what happened. I wake up in the middle of the night, and I have the blanket over my head like I would sometimes sleep. I used to sleep with the blanket over my head, and we'd leave the light on in the room, in the attic, and in this small house, and on the other side of the room was my brother Davey sleeping. And I wake up in the middle of the night and I could hear this humming sound, this electronic humming sound. And then there's a hand coming closer to my, like a 3-fingered hand getting closer and further away to my face. Like I only see a shadow. I see a silhouette, through the blanket. And I can see an arm. I mean, it's a hand with 3 like thick fingers that come to almost points, getting closer and further away. I try to communicate with this thing. Hey, who's there? It doesn't, just keeps doing this. I peek out of the blanket on the other side of the room. I don't want to look at what this thing is, so I don't look in that direction. But I peek out of the blanket and I see my brother on the other side of the room. I start yelling to him. He's not waking up. The electronic humming sound, it's muffling my voice somewhat. I start screaming for my parents. Nobody comes. This goes on for 20 minutes. I start saying my prayers. The whole time. This thing's next thing you know, I conk out, and then it seems like I wake up the next day, and I tell everybody about it. Nobody believes it. Now I've talked about this in other videos. I'm telling the whole story all again here, but what happened? Like how? Like did maybe wires get crossed that night? The technology that the aliens used what did I get abducted? I don't know, but I'm just saying there was something in the room that night. Whatever it was doing, I don't know. I have no doubt in my mind about this, but I feel like sometimes maybe some people, like when Travis Walton in 1975 during his abduction incident. Well, of course, there was, in addition to 6 other people, actually saw him standing under this flying saucer, floating in the middle of a forest, shoot a beam on him, and then they take off because they were scared. They thought he was killed by this beam. But then they went to go back to look for him. He's gone. He didn't show up till 5 days later. Now, as far as Travis was concerned, he was only gone for a couple hours, but it was really 5 days. And he only remembered a little bit, and then he had to get under hypnosis. He remembered more. But did wires get crossed there? I guess it didn't really matter because all these other people saw it happening. But whatever the case, they do have technology, and sometimes it seems like there's some people who don't remember anything. And they don't find out. It goes on for years, and then they figure it out later on. So obviously, these beings have some sort of technology that could just basically... And what, not only should, conk you, the person out, the target they're going after, not only conk that person out, but basically they basically turn off anybody else who's in the vicinity that they're not interested in. I mean, if they're gonna enter someone's house in the middle of the night and abduct them and take them on their craft and do whatever they're doing for whatever reason, and then put them back, I mean, that means that there's other people in the house, or say there's other family members in the house. They're going to have to do something about them. So somehow they make sure that they don't wake up. So there must be some kind of technology. But imagine our government or some other government getting their hands on something like that on top of the flying saucer technology, having both of that. Now, with something like that, you could rule the world. Because nothing could stop you then. I mean, what would stop our government from getting in a flying saucer, flying to the country of an enemy, and just finding the evil dictator somewhere, and just take him out of there and bring him back here, or whatever they're gonna do. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure that that's some kind of technology that. Our government and probably other governments of the world would like to get their hands on, and whether they did or not at this point, got any portion of it. I don't think they have, but that seems like that's something way out of reach at this point. I mean, you'd have to have the aliens probably telling you how to do this or helping you, and there could be more to it than just technology. Apparently these aliens are very telepathic, and maybe it's their mental abilities. Maybe that's how they're doing it with mental. Maybe that's part of it, or maybe it's all of it, or part of it. Who knows? But it could be just their mental abilities that are the biggest factor here. That they're able to basically communicate some sort of a message into the brains of the people they abduct. That, hey, you're not going to remember this. It's almost like some kind of a hypnosis done just by looking at you. So yes, this is very. It's a very interesting thing that's not really talked about. I haven't heard that. It's just something I think about it. Something I think about every now and then. That's something that's not talked about. Like, we all assume that the government's only reverse engineering captured craft, but you'd have to think that they're interested at the very least. They have to be interested in these stories of the abductions and the technology that's used during these abductions that enables these beings to basically conk people out so they don't even know what happened. They don't remember anything. You know, are they using some sort of drug that we don't know? I don't know if it is drugs. It could be something mechanical, some sort of wave. You know, who knows? I mean, if they're 100,000 years more advanced than us, 10,000 years more advanced, a million years, I'm sure they have figured some things out in addition to traversing incredible distances through space. But yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about.